You are listening to the On Purpose Podcast, your guide to living a more purposeful life. What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's show, and thank you for being here. As always, it's a privilege and an honor to show up with you and share this time each and every week. Otherwise, without you, quite honestly, I'm just talking to myself. Nobody needs more of that in the world. So thank you for being here. You know, I'm always excited to learn new stuff, and that's one of the things I really stress for us in adult life especially, is to remain curious and to remain like childlike in our desire to find new stuff, learn new things. And today I'm excited to dive more into that. This week we're excited to welcome a renowned transformational coach and the visionary behind the Reclaim Your Marriage program. Our guest has dedicated herself to helping couples rediscover a spark in their relationships, guiding them through the journey of intimacy and healing with her unique approach that includes inner child work and practical strategies. She has been a beacon of hope for many who seek to deepen their bonds and reclaim the love that once seemed lost. I'm really intrigued in the child work. That's been coming up in a lot of different things I've been reading and studying and conversations I've been having. So I'm excited to dive more into that this week, and I hope you enjoy this week's conversation with Tammy Cox. Enjoy the show, everybody. Tammy, welcome to the On Purpose Podcast, my friend. How are you today?
Oh, I am wonderful.
Ooh.
How are you, Jay?
How could I be better than I am, right? Like, I'm sitting here talking to you. I'm about to learn some new stuff. Life is good.
I just realized that I called you Jay.
You know what's funny? Sometimes people call me that as a nickname anyhow because my name starts with a J.
Yeah, but...
So, it's all good. Yeah, not even worried. But you're still wonderful. Didn't change anything?
Yes. No, didn't change anything. I just realized the story with you and my husband, and I was like, oh, that's so funny. He also, my husband has a uncle named Jay that's out here too. And you remind me of him a lot.
He's a good looking fellow, what you're saying.
I mean.
Yeah. Hey, you know, if you can't laugh at your own jokes, how would anybody else laugh at them?
I mean, they shouldn't.
No.
They're terrible most of the time.
But they're good. They're your personal jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you bring them with you. Well, no matter how we got here, and that's what I think is the world works in mysterious ways, right? Like, we cross paths for a reason, and I'm excited to learn from you today and to share your story with our community and see how we can't impact somebody's life that maybe we never even meet in person, but they just happen to hear the story.
I love that.
But before we get to this, before we get to the heavy stuff, Tammy, I like to have a little warm-up with it. It's kind of like a workout. We just don't jump in and do the heavy stuff right away. So are you ready for your warm-up questions?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Catch you off guard. All right, here we go. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
What kind?
Addicted to coffee. I worked at Starbucks when I was younger, so that put some, I love to blend up a whole bunch of love into my blender because I do like an Insta coffee. It's like a skinny brew, and I like to do whipped coffee. I like to do fun things with my coffee. I'm not a boring little, no, I do fun stuff.
Okay, so fun stuff isn't necessarily healthy coffee. You're not like putting mushrooms and stuff in it. You're going like whipped creams.
I use almond milk and whipped cream, but I think when you say healthy, it's like, to who? Because these people say, oh, full fat, like keto. And then these people say, so it's like, whenever you talk about healthy, I'm just like, that is all relative beliefs anyways.
So you're going for fun coffee.
Yeah.
All right. I like it. All right. Favorite combined meal, brunch or dinner?
Oh, it's got to be brunch. Because brunch to me says champagne.
Okay. I like it. That's a good one. Sunrises or sunsets?
Oh, sunsets.
Why?
Arizona sunsets are so beautiful. Ever since I moved to Arizona, I'm like all about the sunsets. Yeah. But when I lived in California, it was all about the sunrises. So they're both gorgeous, absolutely lovely.
There you go. All right. Books. Do you physical book or audio book?
Audio.
Why?
Because I'm an Audible learner.
You like listening better than reading or holding it in your hands.
I I take it in more audibly than I
Yeah.
do the written word.
Okay. Favorite book or book you're listening to currently?
Mm, Eckhart Tolle, The Stillness. Stillness Speaks.
Stillness Speaks.
I listen to it almost every day because it's a way to go internally and just be, to learn how to just be.
Mm.
It's so beautiful. Everyone should read it. Everyone should read it every day.
What's been your big takeaway from that, or biggest tip on how to get yourself in a place where you can just allow yourself to be?
Living in the present is like, it's learning to let go of thought and just like, you're not in the past and you're not in the future. You're just right here. You're here in this moment with you. You know how some
Right?
people, you're having a conversation with them and they're over here, they're over there. They ain't with you,
Yeah.
right? But to be with someone who's absolutely present and soaking in that moment, like those are the moments that are like life to the body. So my goal each and every day is to be as right here, right now in the present moment as I possibly can, and not in my head living either present or future. I mean, sorry, future or past.
Yeah. No, I gotcha. Yeah, that's good. I like that you're studying that because that is definitely take a practice, right? Because our society is not designed to keep you present. It's designed to keep you somewhere other, right? Like you're always distracted by things.
Yeah, it's like this. Oh, the salvation will come that one day when you get that
Mm,
promotion or when you get that house or when you get this or that. So people are like living their life waiting for a moment. And then they get to their deathbed and they're like, oh, I guess the joy was in the journey. And I just missed it
mm,
because I was waiting for the next best thing and the next best thing. It's like, but what if you just were so absolutely wrapped up in whatever you were doing that there was nowhere else for you to be or wanting to be? So, yeah, I think that is the goal of my life, at least, is like circumstances get to be what they are, and I get to put whatever meaning I want on them. And the meaning I choose to put is just like perfection and beauty and feeling as good as I possibly can, as much of the time as I possibly can.
mm. I love it. All right, one more warm up question for you, Tammy. You got to get your mind right. You got a big problem that's kind of weighing on you, something you got to solve. Do you go to music or silence?
I go to silence.
Okay, talk me through what would that look like for you?
Well, think about music. Music, most of the time, the message in it is, I mean, everything in the world vibrates. It all has a frequency. And
Mm,
so the frequency of silence, if it's true silence, meaning you know how to quiet your mind, meaning you know how to turn off thought, that is the the that is the problem that everyone needs to solve, is turning off thought, because we think that we are creating that what we want through our thoughts, but most of the time we're worrying. And so until we learn how to take our thought captive and really use it to create what we want, until we learn that, absolute silence and stillness is the key to creating what we want, because we just create all these non-existing problems in our head 24/7. Most people,
yeah.
usually when a client comes to me, what I've noticed is she's anxious, she's depressed, she's got like, she spends her day worrying about every negative possible scenario. And so by the time she gets to me, she's unloading it. It's like, you do know, darling, that each and every thought all creating something emotionally within you.
Yeah.
And is it doing what you want it to do? Or is it just creating anxiety and depression and whatnot? So it's about learning that your thoughts are creating all the time. So if you're not doing it on purpose and you're doing it by default, you're doing it by default of our system, which is like fear. We're programmed with fear and all sorts of crap. And so if we're not directing our thoughts on purpose, then trust and believe we're going to depression, anxiety, overwhelm, stress, all that.
Yeah, we spend so much time thinking and strategizing and planning for shit that never happens. Right? Like, think about like there's a
95%.
At least, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here's a good one. You have 100% success rate of surviving all the bad thoughts you had yesterday. You're still here, right? You literally survived every bad thought that came to your mind.
Mm-hmm.
But we spend so much time in that negative space, that space of, like you said, anxiousness, the doubt, and behaviors that keep us from becoming who we really could be. And in your line of work, that keep us from becoming not only who we could be, but who our partner wants us to be, or hoped we were going to be, or our children are counting on us to be.
Yeah. Or simply, I mean, it's so simple when you learn this stuff, because you could be literally anyone you want to be. Anything you can imagine up in your mind, you could be. However, we are so pre-programmed by our parents that we don't even realize that we can switch and change these things within ourselves. That I won't say it's easy, but it is very simple. Like, it's very simple. You can be just about anything you want to be when you learn how to take your thoughts captive and do the processing. It's not hard.
Right. All right. I love that. So you feel warmed up? Because I want to spin right into the next thing that kind of builds off your warm-up questions.
Yep. Go for it.
All right. Here's what I like is something you said there is we control what we think, right? We can choose what we're going to spend our time thinking about, and we can choose who we want to be tomorrow or today or in this moment. But some of that kind of goes back to what we were talking about before we started, and that's that childhood, right? And I think that's the difference between kids and adults is kids don't know all these limits on themselves. Kids have imagination. They're curious. Everything's possible. And then as an adult, slowly our world shrinks, and like only what's possible is what everybody else expects of me, or what I see other people doing, I need to do the same thing. So how do we talk to me about going back to your childhood and kind of recapturing that spirit of childhood as an adult?
I mean, I have lots of processes in which I do this, but like my goal with my ladies, because they come to me and they're struggling in their marriage, right? And they're like, they feel in love, they feel lost, they want their marriage to work, but it's just a mess, right? And so we have to go, okay, well, there's these patterns, right? We all have patterns. Where did this pattern come from? Where did this? So for me, for instance, I came from, like, there was a lot of abuse in my childhood. My father was aggressive, abusive, and he'd control us with religion and fear, right? It was just all around fear. And so what I've noticed with people is they tend to either take after one parent or the other. So there was my mom, really passive, allowed it, right? And then my dad, aggressive, whatever. And so I would hear all the time, this was part of my programming. You're just like your dad. 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 So then I become an adult, fast forward, and that's exactly who I became. Because I was a training, it was a programming. So I had to go back in the system. I had to look at it and be like, this is not who I choose to be. This is not who I choose to be. So I had to go back and I had to turn those switches off and be like, that's not who you are. You get to choose who you be. So I get to be love. I get to be joy. I get to be pure. I get to be in the moment. I get to choose my way of being and my state. So it's really going back to those beliefs. So that's a lot of my work. We go back to the beliefs that are held in the subconscious mind. So we talk a lot in my line of work of life commands. Okay. And life commands are very negative beliefs that were installed early, like in the first 5 years, right? And these beliefs are so deeply imprinted on your subconscious mind that they literally follow you all throughout your life. And my two dominant ones were, I'm not lovable and I'm not important. And so when I go back through any of my traumas, because that's what I do, we go back through a traumatic event and we pull out the belief that was created in that moment. And so when I looked at those as an adult, right, going through my own personal trauma treatments, I looked at those two beliefs and I said, where did I make these true for myself throughout my life?
Yeah.
And it was in every relationship I had. Every single relationship that I had patterns of pushing people away. Because if you tell someone that does not believe that they are lovable, that you love them, they don't believe you. They don't trust you because they don't believe that they can be loved. So I had to change these very deep-seated beliefs. But when I did, I could transform because all of a sudden I am love. I am pure love. I came into this world with, I could go back to that state. And like you said, when we come in, like a baby doesn't feel shame.
Right.
A baby doesn't care if it's naked, if it's got poop all over itself. Like the baby doesn't care. It's so free and so full of wonder. No shame at all until we teach it right throughout the years. This is shameful. That's shameful. That's shameful. You ought to be ashamed. And so, yes, we learn shame very early, but it's like that pure state, that pure baby that does not give a shit, right?
Yeah.
We get to go back to that. So anyways, that's a little bit, you understand that with the commands.
Yeah. So how do you deprogram that? Like how long does that take to reset how you're going to allow yourself to think about yourself, right? Because depending on how old somebody is when they come to you or when they decide to do this work, that's a lot of years of reinforcing that negative talk. So what are the exercises or how long is that window before my new belief becomes my reality and trumps the old one?
Yeah, there's no real time on it because what I've noticed is even though I'm very aware of my commands, I will still notice when they pop up. Like I'll have a situation with my husband and I'm kind of deep dive. I'm like, okay, what went wrong for me here? Like what meaning did I make on that? And so I track myself in my own belief system. So I'll be like, okay, this, that, and then I'll get to the bottom of it because I find that journaling is one of the most powerful tools if you kind of just dig in and dig and dig in. So I'll be like, what happened for me here? Well, I felt like he didn't love me. Okay. Because that'll come at the end. I'll get everything out. And then at the end, I don't feel like he loves me. Oh, there it is. My old command coming back up. Is this true? He doesn't love me. Heck no. He's been with me 18 years. He shows me in all these different ways. This isn't truth. However, the little girl within me still has that belief. And at times it will still pop up. So I won't say that it goes away forevermore because our programming is set in place in a way that really allows us to be human. So it's not a bad system. It's a great system. Without it, you wouldn't have things like memories. You wouldn't be able to have, like we learn our patterning. That's how we learn to exist and thrive in our tribe, right? Is the programming. However, we do get to know that at any point in time, we get to retrain our minds. And so for me, one thing is journaling, affirmations. I have my clients, once my clients find their limiting beliefs, we got to wrestle those to the ground with lots and lots of affirmations, awareness of thought. So when you get in these conversations with your husband, sometimes it's friends, sometimes it's kids, but we need to look at what is the belief that's coming up, because if you have a negative emotion, it's tied to a belief. So then we debrief it. Okay, well, what came up for you? What was the belief that came up for you in that moment? And so then we find that, okay, this one again. Okay, what are the affirmations that we could do to counteract this belief? So if mine is, I'm unlovable, then I have to say, I am love. I am pure love. I ooze love. I give and receive love everywhere I go. Like I'm not just affirming myself. It is like a prayer that I say over and over and over and over again, you know?
Yeah.
So it can be, the answer to that question is it could be fast depending how young the person is. A child shifts like this.
Right.
But I've worked with older women. If they haven't done any inner work, it's a little bit more difficult for them to, retrain themselves. And with men, it's very hard because you guys have been programmed from a very young age to be very disconnected from your emotions. So when I go through things with men, it seems to be like 3 times the work because they're programmed from even contacting the emotion, let alone admitting it out loud. No, I can't feel pain. My parents told me not to cry every time I cried. Like I wasn't allowed to cry.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's why when I see parents doing that, telling their little boys not to cry, I just want to slap them because I'm like, let that little boy feel pain and let him know it's okay and tell him what he's experiencing. Pain is not bad. It's not intrinsically bad. How are we going to know not to touch that damn fire if we didn't feel the pain from the burn? So it's like, it's not bad. You were programmed as men, but men, I find it is just like, unless you're doing constant and I love that men are waking up to this truth. And I'm seeing a lot of men in my space, like working with men, which I'm like, that's what we need.
We've kind of been forced to, right? Like, I'll be honest.
Are you?
I think so. If you're a man and you're not paying attention to the numbers, right? Like the suicide rate of men is drastically higher than females. The unhappiness, men's self-sabotaging behavior, drastically higher than females. So if you're not paying, and your husband was in law enforcement, law enforcement officers, suicide rate is astronomical compared to the general population. So if you're looking at that and you're like, I want a long, thriving life. I want to be here for my great-grandkids. I want to make people happy. I want to be happy. You should probably go, okay, what can I do different than all these numbers? Because statistics are people. Their lives that have created a negative number that we should be learning from. So I think one of the great things for men right now is we're moving to a space where it's okay to say, I'm not okay. We're moving to a space to go, hey, wait a second. I don't feel good. And I think one of the best things that I've seen, Tammy, is women like yourself who are leaders are creating a space for men to actually step into this and not feel shame, not to feel like we're weak. Right? Because that's really kind of one of the barriers that kept men from admitting some of this stuff is we didn't want to be perceived as weak. We didn't want to be perceived as unattractive by women because we cried.
Yeah.
Right? So as much as the guys build these walls, a lot of times society helped us build the wall or told us, hey, here's another brick.
Well, there's a reason why, too. The reason why society trained you out of your emotions is because you could never go to war and kill another human being.
For sure.
If you were in tune with your emotions. So they did it on purpose. And they did it with I know that their intentions were probably not 100% selfish. There's some like protection to it, but at the same time, it's like, it's against like human beings to hurt each other. Like that's against our natural, like who wants to go and kill another human being? So you've been programmed that way for other people's agenda, basically. And it's absolutely effed up and it's absolutely not serving us. And I love that you said men are waking up to this. I do believe that. And I think it's getting stronger, but it's like, there's still so much shame for them to step forward. Like they have to be in a lot of pain before they want to change. And that makes me sad because, a lot of times you're right. They're taking their life. They just can't hang anymore. It's way too painful, but it's like, we just need to get louder. We need to get louder that's not the only way.
Sure.
Like for my husband, you're right. I was the first one to take the step and it's still so hard for him because of his programming, because not only was he in law enforcement, but he was drawn to law enforcement because he came from a family where they didn't talk about emotions. Like it wasn't a thing. So like he has to teach himself that it's okay to be connected with his emotions. And so I love that like you have a son, so you get
Yeah.
to let him know that just because the world says this doesn't mean it's true.
For sure. And no, and more importantly than that, I'll even share this honestly with you, Tammy. Just because I said this when you were a young boy, I was wrong.
Yeah.
And now we
Love
can
that.
learn from it, right? Because and that's where I think we got to get better. And that's one of the things I love what you're talking about there is when I go back and I look at the behaviors or the circumstances that led me to thinking I'm lesser than, I don't have to be beholden to those stories anymore. I can take those stories and go, wait a second, you know what? The time people said I couldn't and I wouldn't and I would be nothing. Well, I thank you now for telling me that because you helped me become what I am. But I'm not going to live in that space where I doubt myself because of your words. Your words provided me strength, right? And I think sometimes we want in our society to only look at the good things that happen in our life and give them all the accolades for who I am and forget about the bad and keep them back there, even though we know in a moment of truth, in a moment of doubt, in a moment of, oh, can I or can't I, we're going to go to a negative self-talk most likely. So it's still impacting us. And what I love about what you're saying and what we're talking about is give yourself grace for all the bad shit that happened to you. Give yourself grace because without the bad, you wouldn't be here with the good.
That's always what I say. I'm like, I wouldn't take back any of my horrible childhood. Like I had a very traumatic childhood. I wouldn't take any of that back because I wouldn't be here. Like I wouldn't have even seeked out help.
Right.
I wouldn't have gone through all the lengths because basically, you know, my dad ended up dying when I was 11 of AIDS. And
oh, wow.
Sorry, my dog just won't let me.
That's all right.
Yeah. So whenever I'm talking about deep stuff, my dog like has to like lick me and stuff. She's so weird.
Therapy dog.
It's just like,
just
it's an energy thing. It's an energy thing. But like, so yeah, my dad ended up dying of AIDS when I was 11. I was very confused because for one side of me was relieved because he scared me so bad.
Yeah.
And the other side of me was sad, like deeply sad, because there was a side of him that was very loving, although he scared the effing, you know what, out of me.
Right.
And so I was a very confused young girl. And so all the way through my teen years, all the way till about 19, I was like this, like very low lows, until I hit about 19 and I had a really low depression. I was very angry. I questioned everything like, why am I here? Why do I have to go through this? And at 19, I was like, it was one of those times in my life where I'm like, I'm either killing myself, taking myself out of this, or I'm healing myself. And there's not going to be like, that's it.
Yeah.
And so I chose to heal. But if none of that, like, I thank God for all of that shit every day because that is the good stuff.
Yeah.
That's the good stuff. That's the stuff that creates this momentum in us to change, or else life would be like this.
Yeah.
That's not fun. The adventure is the roller coaster, the high highs, the low lows. The lows feel terrible. But that's because the high highs feel so good. It's like you can't have one without the other. And I'm so grateful for all the shit because not only did it form who I am, but now I get to help people who have been lower than I, who have gone through way worse than me, like horrible, terrible things. And I can hold that space for them and be like, no, we get to change this.
Yeah.
And how could I have done that if I would have just taken myself out of the game or, you know, anything else or didn't see it as the gift that it is? Our trials are a gift. They truly are. And if we don't see it that way, then we're not going to experience all the positive that can come out of it. Because I know victims. In fact, all my clients start out as victims. They come to me as victims. I say, that's okay. I came into my healing game as a complete victim. But we got to shift it. We got to shift it. We got to go from, because if you're the victim and you are powerless to your circumstance and everything in life is happening to you, then you can never be powerful. You have given your power away to every circumstance instead of saying, no, like I get to define what this is. And the definition is going to be positive. I don't care how it looks.
Yeah.
Because everything is always happening for my good.
Yeah. And I like how you talk about going back to your childhood and dealing with inner child, because as a child, you don't have as much control. You don't have as much say, right? Because you're living under somebody else's rules. You don't have the life experience to decide how I'm going to feel necessarily about this, unless you got parents that are teaching you that, right? But
sure.
So when we go back to that childhood, now we get to say, wait a second, this happened to me. And this is how I felt then, but now I don't have to continue to carry that same weight. 10, 15, 20, 30, 50, 40 years later. I can assign different weight to it. I can take the lesson and let go of the action.
Yeah. So like in that moment of my, like, so say when I've gone back to, when I go back to, one of my traumas. Okay. For instance, like one that came up a lot was my dad, he would discipline us, but it was very violent disciplinings. And the meaning I made out of that was I'm not lovable. He's doing this because I'm not lovable, right? That was the meaning my little 5-year-old brain put to it. But I can go back and I could say, no, my dad learned this from his dad. And in his mind, he was helping me. In his mind, in his rational mind, he was doing that because he thought he was helping me. And so I don't have to hold on to this belief that I'm not lovable, because I'm not, for one, but for two, it's that his intention, it wasn't even. Now, sometimes the intention is not good. So I'm not saying this is what you should say 100% of the time. I'm just talking about this particular situation.
Right.
My dad thought he was doing the best thing for me. He wanted to keep me from all the shit that he went through in his life, which was awful. And that was another part of my journey, is that I had to grow in my compassion for him, knowing that he was who he was because of what he had experienced. And so that was part of my journey too, was I had to go back to his childhood and I had to hold him as a little baby and see the innocence in his face and see the perfection when he came into this world with all the wonder and all the joy that I did, that we all do, and how that was repeatedly ripped away from him throughout the years of his life. I had to go back through his life, and I did it for my mom. And then I had to see how I created the damage with my own kids.
Yes.
And that was being hard.
Yeah.
Because I had realized that I had created the pattern. So it's like, it's all about grace, because we don't know what we don't know. We have become this person because of our patterning. And until we go back through and recreate those patterns, we're just going to keep the system going. And so that's why when women come to me and they're kind of on the fence, like, oh, I don't know if I want to commit to this, I'm like, then just expect that every new generation will be exactly the same. Just expect that, because nothing changes if nothing changes.
No, 100%.
And it does take, it does take all of your focus and all of your love to change these patterns, because they are deeply instilled in us.
But it doesn't take you being perfect.
You'll never be.
Right? You don't have to. And we have this, I think that's some of the things that hold people back, is we're ashamed we're not perfect. We're embarrassed we're not perfect. We don't want to admit our faults. So we never address them, right? We just push them away. And like you said, suddenly we pass, and now our kids are mimicking the same behaviors we mimicked from our dad or mom, who mimicked them from who they learned them from. And we have the same generational trauma and the same generational story repeating. But if we accept that we're not going to be perfect, and nobody has to be perfect to make change, Now we can have, like you said, I mean, I agree with you. Some of the most difficult conversations my wife and I have had with our 3 adult kids is sitting down and going, hey, guys, we'd have done some stuff different if only we'd have known.
Mm-hmm.
But we're learning. And now I want to have conversations about this, or more importantly.
Oh, I love that you're doing that.
Oh, yeah, we're huge on it. But
Beautiful.
more importantly, what I want is I want you to tell me how you were impacted by anything. Right? Because
that's brave,
right?
My friend.
Because if they're at 20, 21, 23, 28, if they can tell us now that, hey, do you remember that time when I was like 7 and you said this? Right? And we go back, I may not have even been thinking of how they felt. I might have had the worst day at work and come home and just said whatever I said to make the thing go away as fast as it could so that I can move on to getting the next kid to sports or cooking dinner or whatever. And I had no idea that whatever I said hit so deep at that 7-year-old child that it would now be a weight they're carrying in their 20s. But if we can talk about it now, it doesn't have to be a weight they carry in their 30s or their 40s, right? We can get rid of it. We can move on. And those are some of the greatest conversations.
Yeah, I love that you do that. I talk to my kids about it all the time. We talk about my pre-healing and my post-healing. Mom, I'm so glad you changed. Like, remember, you used to be like that. You used to do this and you used to do that and you wouldn't let us do this. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I was such a shithead. Like, it's a conversation we get to have. It's like humorous because it's like, it's a different version of me that I'm no longer like, I don't have that sort of shame about it anymore because I realized like I took myself off the hook. You gotta forgive yourself.
Yeah.
You gotta forgive yourself because every person does the best that they can in the moment, even though it doesn't look like it. So my dad did the best he could in the moment. I did the best I could in the moment. And so here I am now. And I tell my kids this, I'm like, it's up to you to get the healing. Like I did my part. My part was healing myself and changing and continuously working on it. But your work is going to have to be the same. Because we're all going to have that choice. So like, I love that you bring that up to them. Like, hey, like what was there anything? And that's great because it's getting them thinking about it because most of the time we don't think about that stuff. Like most of the time when I take my clients back through an event, they're like, oh, I didn't even think of that as a trauma. It could have been something like their first day of kindergarten and being, left there by their mom. Like it could seem like a very small thing that had this huge impact on them, right? And so trauma can be very tricky that way. And it's like, it doesn't have to be this big event. Like I had one event that was like so weird. And it was about me not feeling safe in life. And it was just about my dad getting an IV, the nurse coming to our house because he was, dying. And she was giving him an IV. And something about that event, it was like not even traumatic. But something about that event instilled this belief that, I was never safe and my future, isn't safe. And then another one about money, which was very interesting, a command I had around money. So we didn't have lots of money when my dad was alive. And the Christmas after he died, I woke up and I came out and there was all these presents under the tree and I wasn't used to that. And I was like, oh, so excited for a moment. And then the next second, it was like the belief came in. You have to lose someone you love to have more money. And so I didn't even realize it, but I was waiting for my husband to die for years for the money to come. This is how our subconscious mind works. These beliefs are so tricky.
Yeah.
Now, both my husband and I lost our dads when we were young. My husband was 4 and I was 11, but I had this like very subtle waiting in the back of my head, waiting for him to die. So weird.
Yeah. No, but I think you're right. I think sometimes we don't do the work on ourselves because we don't necessarily equate to whatever we went through to be as traumatic as what somebody else went through. Like, oh, this person was a victim of this horrific crime or this horrific circumstance. They got to do work on that. But like Mine is just, it wasn't that big, so it's not a big deal. But you're absolutely
Mm-hmm.
right. We all see and feel things differently.
Mm-hmm.
And while whatever I experienced may not be traumatic to you, it shaped some of my views, it shaped some of my
Mm-hmm.
beliefs. So it's okay for me to go revisit. I'm not in a competition of victimhood with people. I'm not in a competition of my trauma so much worse than everybody else's. The
Mm-hmm.
goal is to shape our today, right? Shape this moment right now. And if my moment with you right now, Tammy, is influenced by beliefs or behaviors that have been carried with me for years that I don't like, well, now's a great time to fix it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we look at, so when they come to me, we look at, okay, what is something in your life that you've always wanted that you either haven't been able to have or you can't keep? Like, so
Mm,
say it's love, right?
yeah.
Um, so say you really wanted love, but you have not been able to have a long-term relationship. Something always happens to them. And so we look at it. Okay, when that feeling comes up, and then I have them, I do some, subconscious work where I'll have them, because they can't think with their conscious mind. So I'll have them take me back to the event where this emotion was created. And so then I'll have them pull up the picture in their mind, right? So I'm like, okay, pull up the picture. And they're confused because they're like, this doesn't make sense. It has nothing to do with this. So it's like, it doesn't have to, your conscious mind can't see the connection, but your subconscious mind does, because it's the one that made the decision and it's the one holding the pattern. So then we go back through the event, but a lot of times until they get used to the process, they're very confused because they're like, there's no match here. Like I said, the first day of school or whatever. Um, but it doesn't matter if it's something that you've never been able to obtain and you think this is like a tiny little event that happened. Like, it doesn't matter. The proof is the fact that you have not been able to have it.
Sure.
Right. So anything that you want is valid for creating the change, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's a big one. Like, you haven't been able to let in love. That's a big one for me, sabotaging all my relationships
Mm.
because I believe I'm not lovable. Like, most people, I'd even say everyone has some bit of I'm not enough. And so just a little bit of work on that, I'm not enough, you could create massive results in your life about obtaining goals that you have always wanted.
Yeah, I love it. I was just sitting here trying to think about my I'm not enough moments. Right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, right? Like my childhood, I had extremes. I had a mom and a grandma that thought I was like the greatest thing in the world. Anything I did, I was great at, right? I had an idea, you could do it all. Then I had a dad who was a complete opposite. I was never going to be able to do anything. Like there was always all these reasons that I couldn't achieve this or you wouldn't be able to do that. And I always use that as fuel. Like, okay, let me show you how I can do this one. Like I'm gonna prove
Mm.
wrong here again. But then I was always pretty good at drawing back to my strengths, which was my mom and my grandma's voice. Like, oh yeah, you can do this. This isn't that hard. Like,
Well, that's a worthiness conversation too, because
yeah,
it's like, okay, so then the belief I could pretty much say is, women believe in me, men don't. Like,
true.
is that a pattern for you?
Uh no, not necessarily. Because I had really good. I played sports my whole life, so I had really good male coaches that I
Mm.
knew believed in me. But what I would say, I guess, probably the biggest thing for me was be like I don't even know how this fits into the story, but that like I would just never do that. Like that was just such a great example for me that like one of the things I always wanted to be was a dad, so I could be so much different than
Mm.
what I felt.
Mm.
That like no matter what, my kids would know I always believed in them. And if they were willing to work, we're going to do
Mm.
it. And if they don't work, then that's just a result of it. But they will never not do something or not believe because I told them not to believe.
Mm. Yeah, so you really let it be a positive in your life.
But you're right. Like if we go all the way back, if I think about it, yeah, it is a positive now. But there was
Mhm.
always a time where I was angry against it, right? Like you were saying earlier, when you were 19, you were angry. Most of my 20s, I spent really egotistical, I knew everything, and I say angry. Like I wasn't going to be open to a lot of new ideas. And I think it wasn't until I realized, like, wait a second, if he didn't believe in me so much, if he didn't tell me what I couldn't do so often, I would never believe in myself like I do because I was always the opposite.
Well, but and then you also have to have compassion because where do you think he got that
Sure.
verbiage from? He was told it.
Yeah.
That's all we ever do. That's why I say if you don't go inside yourself and start switching some beliefs around, you are just going to mimic the same pattern. It's involuntary. Your subconscious is 95% of your behavior.
Yeah.
So if you don't think on purpose, meaning you don't take your thoughts captive and direct them on purpose, 95% of your thinking is your subconscious. You're on autopilot, right? It's just going. It's just going and going and going. And every day it's pretty much the same. So your results are just based on that. So if you do not think on purpose, then trust and believe you're just doing the same system. That's why you have to have grace on yourself. That's why you have to have grace on your dad.
Yeah.
And the energy of like, I'll prove it to him never wins. Like we had this one friend and he was incredibly wealthy. And it was all despite his dad. I'm going to show him. He was miserable.
Ugh.
Yes, you have tons of money. Good for you. You are so effing miserable. He destroyed his family. Like then he went back to, broke. And yes, he's building himself up, but he's miserable. What is the point of financial success if you are such a miserable human being? So you don't want to get your results driven by a negative energy. You want to get it because you're like, money follows me everywhere. Like you want to have a good relationship with money, a give and a take. And he was also, not on the up and up. He was like perfectly fine, like being super shady in his business and whatnot. And it's like, that's not true success to me.
Yeah.
It's not true success. Success for me is like all my relationships thriving. That's success. My relationship with money, sure. My relationship with my husband, my kids, the people that I allow in my life, not everyone.
Yeah.
Not everyone. But the relationships that I do let them be delicious and full of love and like abundant in joy. That's success for me.
I love it. You know what I love about this is your whole, like how we cross paths is your Reclaim Your Marriage program. Right. And we're talking about fixing ourselves, right? And adjusting ourselves and accepting ourselves before we ever try to have anybody else change. And I think that's such a great message, is that if we want, whether you're fixing a marriage or you're leading a team or you're a leader of a community, because we have listeners from all walks of life, if I want to impact others positively, if I want to lead others positively, if I want to have those great relationships, it starts with my relationship with me first.
That's where everything begins.
But it's so easy to be like, you got to change, Tammy. I'll be happy when you change. But you know damn well I'm not going to be happy because I'm going to find something else to nitpick about. I'm going to find something else to be unhappy about unless I change me. So
the high supporters, like a lot of times I attract high supporter women who tend to attract more controlling men, and higher supporters, they see more as a victim, where it's like, it's what he's doing is what he's doing is what he's doing. And I'm saying, no, because a high supporter tends to pretzel herself in these really just to please everyone else. She's a people pleaser. And so, what do you need? What do you need? No one likes that. You are not their source. You are not their source. You are your source only. You are the best example that you could be to another person is to be so full of yourself, meaning your own source, not your like ego self of like, oh, I'm great. I mean, like your source so full of you that your cup runneth over. I used to tell my kids this, like I can't even function until I've done my inner work for the day. Like, don't talk to me, nothing. I'm a shithead until I've gone in and done my inner stuff first.
For sure.
I am like, I'll just go off my old programming. I have to go within, do my journaling, get myself set of like who I choose to be, who I choose to be.
Yeah.
And then I'll come out and play with you, but I got to fill my cup up first, or else I'm of no value to you.
No.
So that's just something I established in my family early. And the same with my husband. If I'm not good, my husband, we have 3 daughters, and so we cycle together. Sorry if that's TMI.
No.
But when we are not good, we're not good, right? And I have this habit of letting everyone know, like, this is not you. This is me not being okay. And I'm going to put myself in timeout and I'm going to get me right. But it's taking the blame off of it. It's my happiness is not my husband's job. That's my job.
Powerful.
And the same for him. If he's feeling like he's in a bad mood, I'm giving him grace. I'm staying clear. I'm saying, do what you got to do to get yourself right. But it's not about me.
Yeah.
Right? That's not about me. That's about his thought life. So it's like, mind your business. Get yourself right. And all your relationships will fall into place. They will be more beautiful than ever because you're not going like this saying, it's your fault. I'm unhappy. It's your fault. And you're not pleasing me and you're not pleasing me. And you need to do, it's like, it's not about that. It's like me. What are the meetings I'm making out of this? It's all my belief system. So everything that we see around us and the results of our life is all a reflection of the inner world, which is our belief system.
I love it. Tammy, thank you so much for joining us this week. That's a great way to end for me, because that was great advice for our listeners. Where can they follow you to join your community and to maybe partake in the Reclaim Your Marriage program?
Okay. Where can you find me? So I'm on all the platforms. In fact, do you want that? Do you want me to go ahead and give you the link so you can find me? I have a Facebook group, which is a great way to consume some free content. But I also have like a free video that a lot of people find very helpful if they are in a spot where their marriage is really suffering. So I can give you that as well.
Where is that at? Is that on YouTube?
No. I have a link. I think it's a website.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. Shoot it over.
I'm sorry. I am not.
You're good. That's your husband's job.
I'm not very.
That's your husband's
job. I'm
job.
not very savvy when it comes to techie stuff. Yeah. It's all.
How about this, Tammy? We're going to put all the links that we know of to follow you in the show notes so the listeners can just click right on there.
Okay.
Send us, I'll send you an email. We'll have you email over the link to the video and we'll post it up on our Patreon so they can go on there and look at the video.
Awesome.
How's that sound?
It's been such a pleasure.
Thanks, Tammy. Hey, I'm glad the universe crossed our paths so we could have this conversation. I want to thank you for doing your work, not being a victim to circumstance, but taking power in your life and then having the courage to share it so the rest of the world can grow with you. So thank you so much for doing that, and keep on letting your light shine, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.